Snow was falling softly over Windsor Castle, the kind of perfect, postcard snow that makes Christmas in the United Kingdom feel timeless, almost sacred. Inside the palace gates, light glowed from the grand windows. Carols echoed faintly down ancient corridors, and the scent of pine filled the air. But this year, something was different. There was no joy behind those walls. There was no laughter from the young royals or the familiar rustle of paparazzi waiting for that iconic family photo. Because this year, two faces would be missing, not by accident, but by royal decree. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. For the first time in modern royal history, a reigning monarch had done the unthinkable. King Charles III had banned his own son, Prince Harry, and his daughter-in-law, Meghan Markle, from returning to the United Kingdom to attend Christmas with the royal family. And the decision wasn't just shocking, it was final. But here's the real question. What pushed the king to such a drastic move? Was it duty? Was it betrayal? Or was there something darker brewing behind those palace doors, something no one dared to talk about publicly? Because whispers inside the royal household suggest this wasn't about an invitation. It was about control, about loyalty, and about the last straw in a family feud that's been tearing the monarchy apart for years. Imagine this. The royal Christmas invitation list, a centuries-old tradition, usually sent out in early November. Every year, the king's private secretary coordinates the seating, security, and travel arrangements. It's the same process that's happened since Queen Victoria's time. But this year, there was silence. No email, no call, no letter to Montecito. Instead, royal aides confirmed to the press what many thought was unthinkable. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex will not be attending Christmas at Sandringham this year. Just like that, the world knew. The Sussexes had been officially excluded. The reaction was instant. British tabloids screamed with headlines like, "Banished for Christmas," and "Royal exile confirmed." Social media exploded. Supporters cried foul, calling it cruel and vindictive. Others said it was about time, that Charles had finally drawn the line. But behind the media chaos, behind the perfectly worded palace statement, something else was happening. Privately, the decision wasn't about logistics or schedules. It was about trust, or more accurately, the lack of it. Because according to palace insiders, King Charles had received intelligence suggesting that Harry and Meghan weren't planning a quiet, family Christmas. They were planning something much bigger, something that could once again drag the monarchy through the mud. And the timing couldn't have been worse. King Charles's health had been in question for months. His public appearances had become more subdued, his tone more reflective. The monarchy, still recovering from years of scandal, needed stability, not another media circus. So when whispers reached Buckingham Palace that the Sussexes had allegedly pitched a new holiday special featuring footage of their private family celebrations in the US, the king was said to have been deeply troubled. Some reports claimed the palace feared that if Harry and Meghan returned to the UK, they might record, or worse, leak, private moments from inside Sandringham. Whether true or not, it planted a seed of paranoia that grew fast. Because for the monarchy, perception is everything. And perception, lately, had not been kind. After years of interviews, accusations, and confessions, from Oprah to Netflix to Spare, the royal family had grown weary. Too many private conversations had become public headlines. Too many wounds had been reopened. And Charles, the man who had once hoped to be the monarch who united his family, found himself forced to make a decision that would divide it forever. But before we get there, let's rewind. How did we reach this point, where a father refuses to spend Christmas with his son, where a royal family known for tradition suddenly decides to break one of its oldest customs? The answer lies in a web of betrayals, secret letters, royal feuds, and one fateful night when William reportedly gave his father an ultimatum that would change everything. Because the truth is, this wasn't a spur-of-the-moment choice. It was a build-up years in the making, a slow collapse that began the moment Harry and Meghan walked away from the royal family. Do you remember that moment? The year 2020. The world was spinning with pandemics and political chaos, but the biggest story in Britain was Megxit. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex had shocked the world by announcing they were stepping back from royal duties. Not stepping down, just stepping back. That was the phrase that changed history. But stepping back came with consequences. The Queen, Harry's grandmother, Elizabeth II, handled it with grace, at least publicly. She issued a warm statement wishing them well in their new life overseas. But privately, sources said the family was stunned, hurt, betrayed. And though years have passed since then, those wounds never really healed. Fast forward to 2025, and the tension is worse than ever. Because what started as a family disagreement has become a geopolitical PR war, a battle between the palace's polished silence and Meghan's Hollywood microphone. Every move the Sussexes make, every podcast, every appearance, every interview, feels like another bullet fired at the monarchy's image. And the king, caught between love and duty, finally made a choice. He chose the crown. But what does that say about him as a father? That's the emotional question haunting this Christmas. Sources close to the palace say Charles wrestled with the decision for weeks. He wanted to believe there was still a chance for reconciliation. But every time he tried to reach out, he was met with silence, legal caution, or PR spin. One aide reportedly said, "It's like trying to hug a brand." And that's the tragedy of it all. Harry, once the most loved royal of his generation, now seen as a liability. Even his brother William, once his closest ally, had reached the breaking point. The two reportedly haven't had a real conversation in nearly a year. The last time they were seen in the same room, at their grandmother's memorial, they didn't exchange a single word. Insiders say William sees Harry as a security risk, someone who might use private family time for content. Whether that's paranoia or protection, it doesn't matter. The trust is gone. And without trust, there's no family. So this Christmas, the royal family's message is clear. No more scandals, no more leaks, no more compromises. The king will celebrate with those who remain loyal. But there's another layer, one the public hasn't fully grasped yet. Because while the world focuses on Harry and Meghan being banned, what few realize is that the decision wasn't unanimous. Some royals, particularly Princess Anne, fought fiercely against it. Others, like Camilla and William, saw it as necessary to preserve the monarchy's dignity. In other words, this wasn't just a family fight. It was a palace war. And somewhere in the middle of it all, Charles sat in his study, pen in hand, staring at a letterhead that bore his name, and wondering if he was about to destroy his family to save his throne. According to one royal correspondent, the moment came quietly, late at night. Charles reportedly called his private secretary and dictated a brief message. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex will not be joining the family this Christmas. Please inform the necessary parties. No emotion, no explanation, just finality. The secretary typed it, printed it, and handed it to the king for signature. He hesitated for a moment, then signed. Just like that, centuries of royal tradition. The idea that family, no matter the scandal, gathers under one roof for Christmas, was broken. The news leaked before the ink was dry. By dawn, every media outlet from London to Los Angeles was running the story. The reactions were fierce. Supporters of Harry and Meghan accused the monarchy of cruelty, of being cold and unforgiving. Traditionalists applauded Charles for standing firm. Even the late-night talk shows in America turned it into headline fodder. But deep inside the palace, this was no laughing matter. Charles knew this decision would have consequences, political, emotional, and personal. Because once you ban your son from Christmas, there's no going back to normal. Still, the king reportedly told aides, "It's time to protect the institution." And yet, not everyone agreed. Princess Anne, known for her blunt honesty, reportedly told her brother, "You can't keep them out forever. They're family, not fugitives." But by then, it was too late. The decision had been made. And it was only the beginning. Because as December rolled in, more secrets began to surface. Private letters, tense phone calls, and a mysterious leaked document that hinted at something far more serious than a family disagreement. Something that could unravel everything the monarchy had been trying to protect. And when the world learned what was really behind the ban, when the truth came out about who said what, who threatened whom, and why, it would leave even the most loyal royal supporters stunned. Because, as one insider put it, this wasn't about Christmas anymore. It was about survival. But before that secret explodes into the public, one thing is certain. The royal family's perfect Christmas image has shattered. And Harry and Meghan? They're about to find out that sometimes being excluded from the royal table isn't punishment. It's protection. But protection from what? That's where our story truly begins. Because behind this royal ban lies a threat that reaches far beyond the walls of Windsor, a truth that could destroy the crown itself. And when it finally comes out, no one, not even the king, will be ready for it. What came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. It began, as royal scandals often do, with a leak. Early one frosty morning, before most of London had even stirred awake, a single push notification appeared on millions of phones. Breaking: King Charles has banned Prince Harry and Meghan Markle from attending Christmas with the royal family. No official statement, no context, just a headline that sent shockwaves across continents. At first, people thought it was a joke, a sensational tabloid stunt. After all, this was the time of year when gossip magazines invented stories about royal gift exchanges and who was sitting next to whom at Sandringham dinner. But within hours, every major outlet, BBC, Sky News, CNN, confirmed it. The story was real. The Sussexes were officially uninvited. And just like that, the illusion of a possible reconciliation was shattered. The palace gates, once symbols of royal unity and ceremony, became the epicenter of chaos. Reporters crowded outside Buckingham Palace, shouting questions at passing cars. Is it true? Was it William's decision? Did Meghan know beforehand? Cameras flashed as though history were unfolding in real time, and in a way, it was. Inside the palace, aides moved quickly to contain the situation. Officially, they were instructed to say nothing. Unofficially, everyone was talking. It wasn't supposed to go public this way, whispered one communication staffer. Someone leaked it before the official release. The king is furious. But the damage was done. The world knew, and the narrative had already taken off, faster than any royal PR team could spin it. Across the Atlantic in Montecito, Meghan and Harry reportedly woke up to a swarm of messages and missed calls. By the time their team issued a short, cautious statement, the Duke and Duchess were unaware of any such decision. The headlines had already shaped public opinion. And the opinions weren't kind. Rejected by the king, screamed one tabloid. Royal payback, declared another. In living rooms across Britain, debates broke out over tea. Some said it was justice, that the couple who'd trashed the monarchy in interviews couldn't expect to sit at the same table as those they'd criticized. Others said it was cruel, that a father should never ban his own son from Christmas. But the truth, as always with the royal family, wasn't that simple. Behind those golden palace doors, this decision had been brewing for months. There were warnings, arguments, and attempts at diplomacy that quietly failed. And in the end, it came down to one fateful night, a private conversation between King Charles and Prince William. That conversation would never appear in the official royal records. But those close to the family said it was tense, raw, and painfully final. William, who had been silent for too long, finally spoke his truth. "Father," he reportedly said, "you can't keep giving them chances. Every time you open the door, they bring the cameras." Charles hesitated. "They are still my family." "They're your family," William shot back, "but they're no longer ours." Silence followed, the kind that cuts deeper than shouting ever could. For years, the king had tried to bridge the divide between his sons. He believed time would heal what words had broken. But now, faced with mounting pressure from advisors and growing distrust within his own household, he was forced to choose: maintain peace with the Sussexes or preserve the stability of the monarchy. He chose the crown. But the moment that choice became public, the backlash was ferocious. Royal correspondents flooded television screens. Analysts dissected every angle. Commentators questioned whether this was the beginning of the end for the monarchy's public image. The narrative painted Charles as cold, unfeeling, a man who had prioritized image over family. But inside Buckingham Palace, there was another side to the story. According to a senior aide, the decision wasn't about cruelty. It was about protection from potential embarrassment, leaks, and one looming fear that no one dared to speak aloud: the possibility of another documentary. Ever since the Netflix series aired, palace staff had become wary of private moments becoming public content. Candid conversations, offhand remarks, even holiday greetings. Everything felt like it could end up as B-roll footage or a soundbite. The royal Christmas gathering at Sandringham, normally an intimate, tradition-filled retreat, had become a potential minefield. Cameras were banned. Staff underwent additional vetting. Confidentiality agreements were reinforced. But still, the anxiety lingered. One senior official put it bluntly. If they come, everyone walks on eggshells. No one speaks freely anymore. It's not family, it's surveillance. And in that atmosphere of fear and mistrust, the king's decision became inevitable. When the royal press office finally issued its official confirmation, carefully worded and painfully polite, the statement was only 2 sentences long. The king and queen consort look forward to celebrating Christmas with close members of the royal family. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex will not be in attendance. No reason, no elaboration. But in those 20 words, the monarchy drew a line in the snow. Meanwhile, in Montecito, silence. For days, Meghan and Harry said nothing publicly. But behind the scenes, there was turmoil. According to one insider, Meghan was stunned but not surprised. She reportedly told friends, "They've been trying to erase us from the picture since day one." Harry, on the other hand, was said to be devastated. For all the interviews, the confessions, and the distance, Christmas had still been sacred. It was one of the few times he believed reconciliation might be possible, when family could be family again. He sent a message to his father. No response. He tried again. Silence. Days passed. Then a call from a blocked number. An aide from Clarence's house, not the king himself. The voice was firm but kind. "His Majesty sends his warm regards. The decision stands." And that was that. You could almost hear the door closing, not with a slam, but with the soft, ceremonial click of finality. The emotional impact rippled outward. Friends of the Sussexes began speaking to the media, expressing shock and outrage. Meghan's supporters in the US called it a smear campaign. British royalists countered that Harry had brought this upon himself. Even celebrities weighed in. Late-night hosts joked about the world's most awkward Christmas card. Talk shows debated whether forgiveness had a deadline. But perhaps the most telling moment came from someone unexpected, a palace staffer who had worked for the late Queen Elizabeth II. He told a reporter, "Her Majesty always said family comes first, no matter what. I can't imagine she would have approved of this. But then again, she never had to deal with Netflix." That single comment summed up the painful evolution of the royal brand, from private institution to global spectacle. And that's what this Christmas ban symbolized. It wasn't just about who gets to eat turkey at Sandringham. It was about who controls the story. For years, Harry and Meghan had mastered that control. They told their side, eloquently, emotionally, and powerfully, to millions around the world. The palace, constrained by centuries of silence, couldn't fight back publicly. Until now. By excluding them, King Charles reclaimed the narrative in the only way the monarchy knows how, through silence. But silence has a cost. Because every unanswered question becomes a headline. Every missing seat becomes a symbol. And every family decision becomes political. As December moved forward, one question dominated every discussion. Who really pushed for this ban? Was it the king, acting on his own? Or was there a hand guiding him from the shadows? Perhaps someone with more to lose if the Sussexes returned? Some palace insiders whispered about Camilla's influence. Others pointed to the firm stance of Prince William. What's certain is that the king's final decision came only after a private confrontation that left him visibly shaken. He was seen leaving Clarence's house that evening pale and quiet. Aides said he went straight to Windsor, where he spent hours alone in his study. By morning, the draft statement was ready. And when the official announcement hit the airwaves, it wasn't just a press release. It was a declaration of war, a silent one, but unmistakably royal. Outside the palace, snow continued to fall, covering the gates, muffling the sound of the crowd. Inside, the king's aides were already preparing for the next step, managing the backlash, briefing parliament, and preparing for potential diplomatic fallout if the story escalated further. Because what most people don't realize is that royal family tensions don't stay private for long. They ripple into politics, diplomacy, and the monarchy's global image. The Commonwealth watches. The press interprets. And what began as a family decision can quickly become a crisis of credibility. Still, the king stood firm. "The matter is closed," he reportedly told one advisor. "There will be no invitation." But the matter was far from closed. Because even as the palace tried to move forward, rumors began to swirl about a secret conversation that took place just days before the ban was finalized. A conversation where William delivered an ultimatum that would change everything. One source close to the family put it plainly. The king didn't want to do it. He was pressured. Pressured by whom? That's where the story takes a darker turn. Because what came next wasn't just another family disagreement. It was a power play, the kind that could fracture the monarchy from within. And it all began with one sentence, spoken late at night inside Kensington Palace. "Father, if you let them back in, I won't be there." But what did William really mean by that? Was it a bluff or a promise? The answer would soon force King Charles to make the most painful decision of his reign. And it would lead directly to a moment that royal historians would talk about for decades. The night the future King of England gave his father an ultimatum that changed the royal family forever. But that, my friends, is where we go next. Because this was never just about Christmas. This was about power. And power, in the royal family, always comes with a price. What happened inside that private father-son meeting would send shockwaves through the palace. And once you hear what was said, you'll understand why the king's hands were tied. Because sometimes, silence isn't strength, it's surrender. And the king was about to surrender to forces he never thought would rise against him. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. The night before the ban was finalized, London was unusually still. Rain tapped softly against the tall windows of Clarence House, while the lamps inside cast a honey-colored glow over stacks of briefing folders, unread memos, and half-finished tea. King Charles sat alone at his desk, reviewing holiday logistics that no longer felt festive. He was waiting for someone, his eldest son. The door opened without ceremony. William stepped in, not as the smiling public heir the cameras adored, but as a man carrying years of restraint ready to snap. He didn't wait for pleasantries. "Father," he began, voice low, steady. "This can't go on." Charles set down his pen. "Go on about what?" "You know what I mean. Harry and Meghan. They want to come back for Christmas. You can't let them." That sentence hung in the air like a challenge. For months, advisors had hinted that William's patience was thinning, but the king hadn't realized how far things had gone. "They're still family," he said quietly. William's reply was sharp. "They stopped being family when they sold us to Netflix." The word "sold" sliced through the room. Charles flinched. He tried to reason, to shift from monarch to father. "They're lost, William. We can bring them home, help them find their footing again." William leaned forward. "And when they bring a camera crew to Sandringham? When another clip of private conversation ends up as exclusive content? We'll be humiliated all over again." He paused, letting silence weigh the accusation. "I won't expose Catherine or the children to that circus again. If you invite them, I'm not coming." The ultimatum was out. Outside, the rain intensified, rattling against the glass as if echoing the tension. Charles didn't answer right away. His hands trembled slightly as he folded them together, thinking of his late mother's counsel. Never let emotion decide for you. But tonight, emotion had already decided for everyone. He looked at his son, the future king, and saw both righteousness and fear. William wasn't just angry. He was protecting something. His family, his image, maybe even the throne itself. "Do you hear what you're saying?" Charles asked. "I hear it clearly," William replied. "If they walk through those doors, I walk out." The breaking point. That conversation would last nearly an hour. Staff outside the study said they could hear muffled voices, one calm and weary, the other sharp and cutting. William listed every grievance. The Oprah interview, the memoir, the accusations of racism, the portrayal of Catherine as cold. "Every word they publish makes us look like villains," he said. "And you expect me to sip sherry with them under the same roof?" Charles countered that forgiveness was strength, that the public wanted to see unity. "No," William said. "The public wants truth. And the truth is, they can't be trusted." He turned toward the window, staring at the wet reflection of London lights. "Do you remember what Mother used to say? Never let duty destroy your humanity." Well, they've weaponized humanity. They've turned pain into profit. Charles rubbed his temples. "You think I don't know pain?" William softened for a moment. "I know you do. But every time you bend for them, the institution breaks a little more. Spare was the last straw. We can't pretend it didn't happen. That book, Harry's memoir, was still a raw wound. Passages about private conversations, details about fights, even personal comments about Camilla. It had all reopened scars that the monarchy had spent years bandaging." Charles exhaled slowly. "You want me to punish him?" "No," William said. "I want you to protect us." the private counselor. After William left, Charles sat motionless. The room felt heavier than before. Minutes later, Camilla entered quietly. She had been waiting down the hall, pretending to read but listening for raised voices. "How bad was it?" she asked. "Bad enough," he murmured. "He gave me an ultimatum." Camilla placed a hand on his shoulder. "He's right about one thing. You can't fix this by inviting chaos into the house." Charles looked up at her, eyes red with exhaustion. "They're my children, Camilla. My children. And he's your heir," she reminded him gently. "You must choose the future over the past." The phrase "choose the future" lingered long after she left the room. By dawn, the king drafted a note in his own hand. "After much consideration, their Royal Highnesses the Duke and Duchess of Sussex will not be included in the Sandringham festivities this year." He didn't sign it yet. Something inside him hesitated, clinging to hope that perhaps William would relent, that maybe Harry would reach out first. But the next message he received extinguished that hope entirely. A private briefing from his communications director. The message leak. Earlier that week, a journalist had contacted the palace, claiming to have received screenshots of messages between Harry and a U.S. producer discussing a Christmas special. The content was vague but suggestive. Plans for family-themed footage, commentary on royal traditions, even speculation about redefining the monarchy's image. Whether genuine or fabricated, it was enough to ignite panic. When Charles read it, he whispered to himself, "Dear God, not again." If the public ever believed that the Sussexes intended to film or exploit another royal holiday, it would devastate the monarchy's credibility. William's warning suddenly seemed prophetic. He called his private secretary. "Arrange a family meeting," he said. "No leaks, no press. Tonight, the meeting at Windsor." That evening, the senior royals gathered in Windsor's green drawing room. Present were the king, Camilla, William, Anne, and Edward. The atmosphere was thick with fatigue and restrained anger. Charles began. "We've all seen the coverage. I need your counsel." And spoke first. "If this rumor is true, it's intolerable. If it's false, banning them will make you look heartless." Edward added, "Either way, it's going to leak. We might as well act decisively." William crossed his arms. "It's already leaked. The longer we wait, the worse it gets." Charles turned to him. "So your position hasn't changed?" William's jaw tightened. "No. Either they stay out, or I do." Camilla broke the silence. "Then we have our answer." And frowned. "You can't just erase them, Charles. The people will see cruelty." "The people," William said, "saw humiliation when Spare came out. They'll understand boundaries." Charles looked from one face to another, realizing there was no unity even within the walls of Windsor. "This family," he said softly, "is tearing itself apart." And replied, "Then stop pulling the threads." Her meaning was clear: don't make another rash public decision. But by then the king had already made it in his heart. The father's dilemma. Later that night, Charles walked alone through the corridors. Portraits of his ancestors watched silently as he weighed his options. To invite Harry meant risking another scandal. To exclude him meant confirming to the world that the royal family was broken beyond repair. He stopped before a painting of Queen Elizabeth II. "What would you have done, Mummy?" he whispered. The portrait didn't answer, but he imagined her steady voice. "You always protect the crown first." At that moment, the choice crystallized. He returned to his study, pulled out the unsigned letter, and placed his seal on it. The wax hardened beneath the imprint of the royal crest. Decision made. The following morning, William received a discreet call. "His Majesty has confirmed the exclusion." He said only 2 words. "Thank you." The fallout begins. Yet even as William felt relief, guilt crept in. He had forced his father's hand, and deep down he knew the headlines would soon portray Charles as cold, perhaps even vindictive. But from William's perspective, it was the only way to protect the institution, and by extension, his own children's future. That afternoon, he confided in Catherine. She listened quietly, then asked, "Do you think this ends it?" "No," he said. "It only begins it." He was right. Within 24 hours, the news leaked again. Someone inside the palace tipped off a reporter that William had been instrumental in the decision. The story spread like wildfire. Prince William forces King Charles to ban Harry and Meghan. For the public, it was delicious drama. For the family, it was poison. Charles was livid. "We agree on discretion one night. And by morning it's on the front page, he thundered to aides. The palace scrambled to issue vague denials, but the narrative stuck. Behind closed doors, the king confronted his communications chief. Find out who's leaking. And quietly, the leak hunt began, but it wouldn't stop more information from trickling out. Emotional aftershocks. Harry, reading the headlines from California, was crushed. He chose William over me, he reportedly told a friend. Meghan tried to soothe him, but anger replaced sadness. Of course he did, she said. They always choose the heir. Meanwhile, inside Buckingham Palace, Charles buried himself in state paperwork, pretending not to notice the growing rift between his sons becoming global spectacle. He told Camilla, maybe one day they'll understand. Camilla's reply was cold realism. Or maybe they'll never forgive you. But better their resentment than another scandal. The unseen consequence. What no one expected was the domino effect. Commonwealth leaders privately questioned the monarchy's unity. Donors to royal charities hesitated, unsure which branch of the family truly represented the crown. Even longtime palace employees whispered that the king looked haunted. And William? He began to sense that winning the battle might cost him the war. Public sympathy shifted. Polls suggested that people viewed the ban as excessive. Catherine advised caution. If this turns against you, you'll look like the aggressor, she warned. William nodded. Then we'll let father take the blame. It was a brutal calculation, but politics inside the palace rarely left room for sentiment. As Christmas approached, Charles rehearsed his annual broadcast, the message that would play to millions on television. He practiced the lines about unity and peace, aware of the irony. Between takes, he asked his speechwriter to remove one sentence. I look forward to welcoming all my family this holiday season. The writer hesitated. Your Majesty, that's tradition. Tradition changes, the king said. Yet when he looked at the teleprompter again, his voice caught. The absence of that single line felt louder than any statement he could make. For the first time, he understood what William had meant by boundaries. They protected. The news of the royal ban hit Montecito like a winter storm. But instead of snow, it rained cameras. By mid-morning, paparazzi cars lined the quiet streets outside Harry and Meghan's sprawling California mansion. Drones hovered above their red-tiled roof like vultures circling a wounded animal. It was chaos, elegant, photogenic chaos. Inside, Meghan Markle stood by the window in silence, phone in hand, watching the frenzy build. Harry was pacing, jaw clenched, phone buzzing non-stop with messages from friends, family, and journalists. But Meghan wasn't scrolling social media. She wasn't panicking. She was thinking. Because for Meghan, silence wasn't surrender, it was strategy. Every time the royal family froze her out, she'd learned how to turn rejection into power. When they stripped her of titles, she built a brand. When they mocked her tears, she sold her story. And now, as the monarchy's ban became global news, she saw an opportunity, one too perfect to ignore. Let them think we're wounded, she said calmly, her eyes still fixed on the flashing lights outside. We'll answer them our way. Harry stopped pacing. What do you mean, our way? Meghan turned, expression unreadable. I mean, Christmas is about family, isn't it? So let's talk about family. The idea landed like thunder. Harry hesitated, sensing danger. You're not thinking of doing another. But she already was. The pitch. 2 days later, Meghan's longtime publicist, an industry veteran who could spin scandal into sympathy overnight, made a few quiet phone calls to major networks. The pitch was simple but explosive, an exclusive holiday sit-down interview where Meghan would reflect on forgiveness, motherhood, and the meaning of family during the holidays. The timing was perfect. Christmas specials were in high demand. Every major network wanted feel-good content, and nothing drew viewers like the Duchess of Sussex. But there was a twist hidden in the fine print. Meghan wanted full editorial control. That clause alone sent executives into a frenzy of speculation. What exactly did she plan to say? And more importantly, who would she be forgiving or condemning? Within 48 hours, 3 major American outlets, CBS, NBC, and Netflix, submitted competing offers. She didn't pick any of them. Instead, she chose something unexpected, a smaller but fiercely independent network known for its raw, unfiltered interviews. It was the perfect balance, credible enough to make waves, small enough to give her control. The working title, A Royal Christmas, My Truth, My Peace. Even the title sounded like a headline waiting to explode. Harry's resistance. But not everyone in Montecito was on board. Harry resisted from the start. Meg, we can't keep doing this. Every time we talk, they call us liars. It just fuels the hate. Meghan smiled softly, the way she did when she'd already made up her mind. They're already talking, Harry. The only difference is whether we get to tell our story, or they do. He shook his head. It's not a story anymore. It's a war. She moved closer, voice dropping to a whisper. Then let's win it. Those 4 words sealed the plan. Behind the scenes, Meghan's team began prepping the interview logistics. Lighting design that mirrored Buckingham Palace interiors, a symbolic Christmas tree in the background, and soft piano music, subtle, emotional, strategic. It wasn't just an interview. It was theater, and Meghan was the director. The script. Before cameras rolled, Meghan rehearsed for days. Every sentence was measured, every pause deliberate. She wanted to sound wounded yet wise, wronged yet gracious. Her team crafted lines like stage dialogue. I've always believed in forgiveness, even when forgiveness isn't returned. Sometimes the hardest part of family is realizing they don't see you as family at all. I was raised to believe kindness is strength. I hope my children learn the same. Harry watched quietly during rehearsals, torn between admiration and dread. He knew how the royal machine would respond, not with press statements, but with silence. Cold, surgical silence that made you look unhinged for even speaking. But Meghan thrived in that silence. It gave her power. She didn't need their approval. She needed their attention. And on Christmas Eve, she would have both. The interview begins. It aired at 7 p.m. Pacific time, perfectly synced to midnight in London. The first shot, Meghan sitting gracefully beside a glowing fireplace, wearing an elegant cream dress. A cup of tea in her hand, a soft smile on her lips. The camera zoomed in just enough to catch the glint of her wedding ring and the faint tension in her eyes. The interviewer began with small talk about motherhood, philanthropy, and California's sunshine. It was gentle, predictable, until it wasn't. Then came the pivot. Your Majesty has reportedly decided that you and Prince Harry won't be spending Christmas with the royal family. How did you feel when you heard that? Meghan took a slow breath, eyes lowering for effect. It hurt, she said softly. Not because we weren't invited, but because it confirmed what we've known for a long time. That forgiveness isn't something they believe in. The audience leaned closer. The interviewer did too. Do you feel the king still loves you? I think he loves the idea of family, Meghan replied. But love isn't real when it's conditional. Boom. The quote exploded across the internet within minutes. And she wasn't done. Without ever naming names, Meghan painted a picture of isolation, rejection, and quiet resilience. She spoke of family members who refused to speak directly, of letters unanswered, and of traditions that became weapons. Every line dripped with emotional precision. And when the interviewer asked, "Would you ever go back?" Meghan smiled sadly and said, "I can forgive, but I can't forget." That line trended worldwide within 10 minutes. The palace reacts. Across the Atlantic, the royal family gathered at Sandringham for their private Christmas Eve dinner. Between the clinking of silverware and the polite chatter, one of the younger aides rushed in with a tablet. "Your Majesty, you should see this." Camilla frowned. "Is it another article?" "No, ma'am," the aide said. "It's live." Someone turned on the television. The room fell silent. There she was, Meghan, glowing under studio lights, speaking calmly, confidently, directly to the world. William's face hardened instantly. "She timed this," he muttered. "She's doing it on purpose." And crossed her arms. Of course she did. But Charles said nothing. He simply stared at the screen, expression unreadable. And when Meghan said, "I hope one day my children can know their grandfather, if the monarchy will ever allow it," the king's face drained of color. It wasn't just a jab. It was a dagger. That single line transformed the narrative overnight. What had been framed as a royal ban now looked, to millions, like a cruel father denying his grandchildren a Christmas visit. The headlines flipped within hours. Heartbroken Meghan speaks of estrangement. King Charles shuts out his grandkids for the holidays. Royal Cold War turns emotional. By morning, the monarchy was on defense again. The damage control. Inside Buckingham Palace, phones rang nonstop. Advisors convened an emergency meeting to draft a response, but Charles refused. "No statements," he said quietly. We won't dignify it. William disagreed. You can't stay silent. People think you're heartless. Charles turned to him, eyes tired. Silence used to be our dignity. Now it's our downfall. He stood, looking out the window toward the snowy gardens. You wanted boundaries, William. Now we have walls. Outside, the press swarmed. Commentators debated Meghan's poise under pressure. American talk shows called her the embodiment of modern courage. Even critics admitted she delivered her message with elegance and precision. Behind closed doors, the royal family's unity cracked again, and reportedly told Charles, "You've underestimated her. She doesn't need the palace anymore. The world is her audience now." And she was right. Because Meghan had done more than defend herself, she'd reframed the entire narrative. She wasn't the exile anymore. She was the victim turned heroine. And for Charles, who had hoped the Christmas ban would restore royal authority, the opposite had happened. The fallout in Montecito. The morning after the interview aired, Meghan woke to a wave of global attention, trending hashtags, glowing headlines, and invitations from major outlets. She smiled, scrolling through her phone as sunlight spilled through the windows. Harry entered, bleary-eyed, holding coffee. "It's everywhere," he said flatly. "They're calling it the Christmas confession." Meghan looked up. "They're listening, aren't they?" "They're angry," he corrected. "My father. William, they'll see this as war." She set her phone down. "Then let them. They started it." But deep down, Harry wasn't so sure. He could already feel the invisible weight of royal retaliation, not through statements or interviews, but through silence and exclusion. That was how the palace fought back. And this time, they wouldn't just isolate the Sussexes. They'd erase them. The unexpected leak. 3 days later, just as the post-interview buzz began to settle, a new twist hit the headlines. An anonymous insider had leaked the full production emails from Meghan's interview, and among them, one particular message stood out. It was from Meghan's publicist to the production team, dated 2 weeks before the announcement of the royal ban. It read, "We anticipate the palace may block any Christmas reconciliation. If that happens, we pivot to a holiday-themed special focused on forgiveness and family." The implication was clear. The interview had been planned before the ban. The response wasn't a response at all. It was premeditated. The revelation detonated like a bomb. Overnight, public sympathy began to wobble. Commentators questioned her sincerity. British tabloids called it manipulation wrapped in tears. And within the palace, a grim satisfaction spread. William reportedly said to his father, "She just proved our point." Charles, though, didn't smile. "She may have," he said softly, "but she's not finished." The calm before the next storm. Because even as headlines shifted and analysts debated, Meghan was already preparing her next move, something far more personal, far more dangerous. If the palace thought they could leak against her, she'd leak back. And what she had, or rather, what someone close to her had just sent her, would change everything. A set of confidential palace communications, intercepted and forwarded by an anonymous insider. Emails that hinted not just at a royal ban, but at the real reason behind it. Something about a private argument between Charles and William. Something that, if made public, would expose the monarchy's deepest fracture. The night the heir to the throne forced his father to choose sides. Meghan stared at the subject line of the email and whispered, "They wanted a war. Now they'll get one." Because the next leak wouldn't be about her feelings or her pain. It would be about power. And when she released it, the monarchy would have no idea what hit them. But before that truth surfaced, one palace aide, frightened and guilty, would make a desperate attempt to stop her. And in doing so, he'd set off the most dangerous chain reaction the royal family had ever faced. What came next would tear open secrets the monarchy thought were buried forever. And no one, not even the king, would walk away unscathed. That it started with a whisper. Just when Meghan thought she'd controlled the narrative, when the hashtags were in her favor, and the world was applauding her grace under fire, an email surfaced. One email. Anonymous. Undeniable. And it didn't just poke holes in her story. It set the entire house of cards on fire. It was early morning in London when the leak dropped. The tabloid The Mirror Herald published a front-page exposé titled, "Exclusive. Meghan's Christmas interview was planned before the royal ban." Inside, screenshots from production emails showed planning documents dated weeks before the king's announcement. One even included a marketing tagline proposal: forgiveness, family, and freedom. The Duchess speaks her truth this Christmas. The world gasped. The timing was devastating. Just days earlier, Meghan had told viewers she was deeply hurt by the last-minute Christmas ban. But now, it appeared she had anticipated it all along. Was it really pain or performance? That single question flipped the global conversation overnight. Within hours, the same networks that had praised her composure were running cold analyses of her PR strategy. Headlines turned sharp. The Duchess scripted her sorrow. Manipulation or masterclass. And inside Buckingham Palace, something rare happened: laughter. A senior aide, usually solemn, reportedly chuckled as he handed the paper to another. For once, he said, she tripped on her own script. But in the king's private chambers, there was no laughter. There was only relief and strategy. Because the leak hadn't just happened. It had been orchestrated. The quiet counterstrike. For weeks, royal advisors had been desperate to retaliate without breaking the monarchy's code of silence. Direct responses were forbidden, public confrontations beneath the crown's dignity. But leaks? Anonymous sources? Those were tools the firm had mastered generations ago. According to insiders, the order came quietly from one of Charles's closest communications chiefs. You can't fight her with sympathy, he told his team. You fight her with receipts. The leak was surgical, not a flood, just enough to wound. Enough to flip the narrative without tracing it back to the palace. And it worked. The morning after the exposé, social media was divided in chaos. Meghan's supporters cried, "Smear campaign," while critics mocked her credibility. Even U.S. outlets, once sympathetic, began to distance themselves. On a talk show in New York, a host quipped, "So, she wrote her Christmas heartbreak before it even happened? That's deficient." In Montecito, the mood was volcanic. Harry slammed the newspaper on the table. "They did this. I know they did. No one else could have those emails." Meghan stood motionless, phone in hand. "Let them laugh," she said quietly. "It means they're scared." "Scared?" Harry barked. "They're celebrating." She met his eyes, calm but cold. Not for long. The hunt for the mole. Meanwhile, the leak sparked paranoia on both sides of the Atlantic. Meghan's team launched an internal investigation, combing through devices, message logs, and NDAs. One assistant resigned within hours, too quickly. Another deleted months of chat history. By nightfall, Meghan's PR chief called with the verdict she dreaded. The leak hadn't come from within her American team. It had come from the UK. Someone close to the palace had hacked or passed her private correspondence to the press. "Then it's war," Meghan said flatly. "And this time, we don't play defense." Harry stared at her, realizing she wasn't exaggerating. He knew that tone, the quiet, unflinching voice she used when she'd made up her mind. "Meg," he warned, "if you go after them again, they'll hit back harder." She smiled faintly. "Then I'll make sure they regret it." The palace war room. Inside Buckingham Palace, damage control turned into celebration. For once, the headlines weren't about royal cruelty. They were about Meghan's media manipulation. Camilla hosted a small private luncheon with Charles, William, and a handful of trusted aides. Over tea and scones, they reviewed clippings. She walked straight into it. William said, unable to hide satisfaction. "The public sees it now. They see the act." Camilla raised an eyebrow. "Don't underestimate her. The woman can twist sympathy like silk." Charles sighed. "Enough of this circus. Every day it's another headline. We need calm, not victory." But calm was impossible now. Outside the palace walls, protesters and reporters clashed. Supporters of Meghan accused the royal family of psychological warfare. Monarchists countered with chants of "Protect the King." The spectacle was global. And yet, amidst the chaos, there was one truth no one in the palace dared to say aloud. The leak may have worked, but it had also crossed a line. Because if Meghan discovered proof that the emails were leaked from within the royal household, the monarchy could face a full-blown international scandal, possibly even a legal one. That risk didn't stop William. He leaned toward his father. "We should finish this while we can." Charles frowned. "Finish it. Make sure she can't use the press against us again," William said. "Freeze her out. Completely." Camilla exchanged a glance with the king, a look that said, "He's right." And within hours, the palace's next move was underway. Operation Frost. Codenamed internally as Operation Frost, The plan was simple: erase the Sussexes from the royal ecosystem. No mentions in official Christmas communications. No inclusion in family bulletins. No acknowledgement in speeches or ceremonies. Even their names would be quietly removed from certain charity listings. In the royal family's world, that's not punishment, it's erasure. By the following week, journalists noticed the omission. The palace's official Christmas card featured Charles, Camilla, William, Catherine, and the children, but no mention of Harry or Meghan. The caption read simply, "Together for a brighter tomorrow." The symbolism was brutal. When reporters asked if the omission was intentional, a palace spokesperson offered a cryptic reply. The photograph represents those working directly on behalf of the monarchy this year. Translation: they don't work for us anymore. They don't exist to us anymore. The move sent shockwaves through royal circles. Even insiders who supported the ban were stunned at how far the palace went. Princess and reportedly told a friend, "You can't just erase people because they disagree with you. This isn't the army." But to William, it was necessary. "Every time we leave a door open," he told aides, "she finds a camera to walk through." And with that, the Sussexes became ghosts in their own family. The counterattack. Meghan's reaction was quiet, too quiet. For 2 weeks, she said nothing publicly. No statements, no social posts, no interviews. The media assumed she was humiliated, retreating from the spotlight. But behind closed doors, she was plotting. While Harry sulked and the press mocked, Meghan was on calls, long, late-night calls, with her American legal team. She wasn't after revenge this time. She was after exposure. Her goal was to find proof that the email leak came from a palace insider. And when she did, she planned to make it public in a way that would devastate the monarchy's carefully curated reputation. Her lawyer warned her, "If you push this, they'll counter-sue or unleash worse." Meghan's reply was ice cold. "They already have." And then, as if fate were listening, an anonymous message appeared in her encrypted inbox. The sender's name was simply a friend. The message read, "You're right. It came from inside the palace. And I can prove it. But if you expose this, you'll put me in danger." Attached were 2 files. Partial email headers showing the leak originated from a royal domain address. Meghan's hands trembled as she opened them. It was the confirmation she needed, and the spark that would reignite the entire war. The domino effect. The moment Meghan shared the discovery with her team, word began to spread. Someone had turned on the royal family from within. Palace staff scrambled as rumors of a mole circulated. Every employee, from footmen to senior advisors, was suddenly suspect. Devices were confiscated, emails audited, NDAs reissued. The internal panic was so intense that one insider joked, "It's like MI5 moved into the gift shop." But it wasn't a joke for long. Because as investigators dug deeper, they realized the mole wasn't leaking for money or gossip. It was personal. And when Charles learned who it was, his heart sank. It wasn't some disgruntled aide or junior staffer. It was someone who'd once sworn loyalty to him personally. A familiar face. A trusted hand. Someone who had attended private family meetings, handled sensitive correspondence, and quietly turned it over to Meghan's side. The betrayal cut deeper than any tabloid headline. For Charles, it wasn't just a scandal anymore. It was treason from within. And the king's patience had finally reached its limit. The king strikes back. A private meeting was called at Clarence's house. Charles, pale but composed, addressed his senior team. "This has gone far enough," he said. "If they want a war of exposure, they'll get one. But we'll control it." He instructed aides to prepare an unprecedented move, a limited release of verified communications to correct the public record about the Christmas ban. The statement, carefully worded and framed as clarification, painted the Sussexes as informed in advance and aware of the decision before it was finalized. It was technically true, but strategically devastating, because it implied that Meghan's tearful interview, her entire emotional narrative, had been based on deceit. The press went wild. King breaks silence, reveals Meghan knew beforehand. Royal sources say Duchess misled the public. It was the royal family's most aggressive PR move in years, a declaration that the gloves were off. In Montecito, Meghan watched the coverage unfold in silence. Her jaw clenched, but her expression stayed composed. "They want a war," she whispered. "They just got one." The final spark. That night, Meghan sat at her desk, scrolling through the encrypted messages from her mysterious informant, the palace insider. One message stood out. It read, "You think you've seen everything? You haven't. There's more. The emails between the king and William, the real reason you were banned. If they come out, it's over for both of them." She stared at the screen, heart pounding. "Send them," she typed. The reply came minutes later. "You'll get them soon. But once they're out, there's no turning back." And that's where things spiraled beyond control. Because those emails, real or not, would contain claims that could shake the monarchy's foundation, the king's doubts, William's threats, and the exact words that ended any chance of reconciliation. The decision Meghan faced that night wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about detonating the entire institution that had once defined her. She closed her laptop, whispered to herself, "If truth burns the palace down, then so be it," and walked away. Outside, the California wind howled like a warning. Because once those messages were released, true or fabricated, the monarchy would enter uncharted territory. And what came next would make every royal scandal before it look like child's play. The world had seen Meghan Markle at her most polished, poised, articulate, glowing with confidence under studio lights. But what followed her Christmas interview was unlike anything she had faced before. It began with a single word plastered across front pages in bold, merciless type. Exposed. Within hours, Meghan's empire of control, carefully built through polished soundbites and sympathetic documentaries, began to buckle. Every major media outlet, from the Daily Mail to the New York Times, shifted tone overnight. Yesterday's narrative of bravery and vulnerability had mutated into a story of manipulation and deceit. Television analysts called it the greatest PR miscalculation since Wallace Simpson. And this time, Meghan had no script that could save her. The avalanche begins. It started with morning talk shows. On one British panel, a well-known royal correspondent smirked as footage of Meghan's tearful Christmas interview played on a loop. "She told us she was blindsided," he said. "But here's the proof she'd planned the entire interview 2 weeks before the supposed ban." That's not heartbreak. That's rehearsal. The audience laughed. Across the Atlantic, American hosts who once defended her now used words like calculating, strategic, and disingenuous. One host asked bluntly, "Was the whole thing a setup? Did Meghan Markle fake her heartbreak for ratings?" The camera cut to another commentator who chuckled dryly. At this point, it's hard to tell where her real feelings end and her brand begins. The clip went viral. And just like that, the public mood shifted. The backlash. In Montecito, Meghan watched the coverage unfold on a muted television. The headlines rolled like a storm. The Duchess of Deception. Royal fakery. Christmas interview exposed. Palace 1, Meghan 0. Her team had gone into full crisis mode. Phones rang, emails flew, PR strategists drafted rebuttals. But for every statement they released, the backlash grew worse. An editor at The Guardian summed it up perfectly. The Sussexes played the sympathy card one too many times. The world is tired of their story. Even Hollywood, once her safety net, began to pull back. A well-known producer, one who had worked with Meghan's Archwell Foundation, told Variety anonymously, "She's become radioactive. You can't touch her without being dragged into a royal soap opera." Meghan's phone buzzed endlessly. Friends she hadn't spoken to in months sent sympathetic messages that felt hollow. Publicists she once relied on went silent. And through it all, Harry remained quiet. For the first time since their exodus from the royal family, he seemed truly defeated. Harry's breaking point. That night, he found her in their home office, scrolling through news articles, her face lit by the harsh blue glow of the screen. "Meg, you have to stop reading that," he said softly. She didn't look up. "They're saying I lied, Harry, that I staged everything. They've said worse." "No," she said, voice trembling. "This time they believe it." He tried to comfort her, but she pulled away. "Do you realize what they've done? They flipped it. They've turned me into the villain again." Harry sighed, pacing. "You think I don't see it? Every time we speak, they twist it. Every time we're silent, they twist that too. We can't win." Meghan turned to him, eyes blazing. "Then maybe we stop trying to win and start fighting to survive." Harry frowned. "What does that mean?" But she didn't answer. Not yet. Because in that moment, she was already thinking of her next move. a move so drastic it would shock even her most loyal supporters. The public crack show. While Meghan's inner circle scrambled, the cracks in the Sussex brand grew visible to the world. Social media, once her loyal battleground, turned hostile. The hashtags that once trended in her favor, hashtag We Love Meghan, hashtag Stand With Sussex, vanished, replaced by hashtag Megxit Returns and hashtag Roe Revenge Fail. Even former allies spoke up. A celebrity who had once attended the couple's lavish wedding posted cryptically on X, "You can only cry wolf so many times before people stop listening." The comment received over 400,000 likes. Then came the polls.